What is poppin' YouTube? Back again with another video. Today we're talking about Garrett Wilson as the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football in 2023. Let's go. Now, I know you clicked on this video and you said to yourself, what the heck is this guy going to talk about? There is no freaking way that Garrett Wilson could be the wide receiver 1 when there's so many better options like Justin Jefferson and Jamarr Chase. Those are the only two guys, Caleb, that you could even say. And even if you said Jamarr Chase could be the wide receiver 1, I think you're crazy because Justin Jefferson is just that good. Now, I have even heard some analysts start to talk about Kupp has the potential to be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. But I even saw the comments in his video, and those comments were atrocious. So if you're already starting to type out a comment, I don't blame you. But let me prove to you why I think Garrett Wilson does have wide receiver 1 potential in fantasy football in 2023. First, if we take a look at Garrett Wilson's rookie year, 17 games, 147 targets, 83 receptions, 1,103 yards, 13.3 yards per reception, and 4 receiving touchdowns, 12.7 fantasy points per game, wide receiver 30 on a fantasy points per game basis. Now, a lot of you are saying, yeah, that's a great year, Caleb, but that's a wide receiver 2 season. The targets are great. He commanded a ton of targets, but how can those targets even resemble Justin Jefferson and Jamarr Chase when they are putting up such ridiculous numbers? I pulled up these splits from RotoViz comparing Zach Wilson and Mike White. So in the 4 games that Mike White played and the 13 games that Zach Wilson played, we can see the significant difference last season and what those splits would have looked like for Garrett Wilson. PPR points per game with Mike White, 17.27 points per game. With Zach Wilson, only 11.43 fantasy points per game. We'll look at receptions. He was only getting averaging around 4 receptions a game with Zach Wilson. With Mike White, that went all the way up to 6.75. If we're looking at targets, Mike White, 12.5 targets per game. With Zach Wilson, only 7 targets per game. Now, I think for me, I am just looking at the data and I'm saying to myself, if Garrett Wilson had a comparable quarterback, which Mike White, as good of a backup as he was still a backup. He got beat out by Zach Wilson. And as much as we loved Mike White and we said Mike White was better than Zach Wilson, and the numbers definitely proved and really catered toward Garrett Wilson, he had a better connection with Mike White. Just imagine for a second, with just an average quarterback, that if this was over a full 17-game season, Garrett Wilson would have been in line to get 212 targets. Now, I know those splits are a little bit ridiculous. Even if Garrett Wilson could get into the high 170s, mid 180s, he would be on track to have the same amount of targets as Justin Jefferson, the absolute target hawk. Now, you're going to say to me, Caleb, Garrett Wilson didn't have a historical rookie season like Justin Jefferson. Well, let's look at Justin Jefferson's rookie season. 17.1 fantasy points per game was the wide receiver 9 his rookie season with 1,400 air yards, 1,400 receiving yards, 88 receptions on 125 targets. Now, if we look at how comparable that would have been in these in-game splits with Mike White. Let's say Mike White was the whole starter last season. We're looking at Garrett Wilson with 17.27 fantasy points per game, which would have put him right on track with Justin Jefferson's rookie season. Now you're saying to me, Caleb, Justin Jefferson was wide receiver 9 his rookie season. There's no reason that we're now, even if you take the in-game splits, that all of a sudden Garrett Wilson's going to jump up to be the wide receiver 1. Well, what did Justin Jefferson do in year 2? In year 2, Justin Jefferson averaged 19.4 fantasy points per game, 167 targets for 108 receptions, 1,900 air yards, 15 yards per reception, 10 total touchdowns as the wide receiver 4 with 19.4 fantasy points per game. What if that is the similar step up that Garrett Wilson gets? But unlike Justin Jefferson, who had Kirk Cousins and then just improved in year 2, we have Garrett Wilson, who is going to just improve in year 2, but he also gets the major quarterback upgrade of even going from the best quarterback he had with Mike White to now getting Aaron Rodgers for a full season. I think it's really important too to then talk about Aaron Rodgers and his past few seasons with Davante Adams. So if we look at in games when Aaron Rodgers was playing with Davante Adams, he played in 41 games. We're going to look at stats from the last 3 years, from 2019 to 2022. We're going to look and we're going to see that Aaron Rodgers with games with Davante Adams was averaging 33 passing attempts per game, 22 completions, and 2.2 passing touchdowns a game, which is great numbers. Now, if we compare that to the Zach Wilson-led Jets, we can see that Zach Wilson was averaging 28 pass attempts a game with only 182 passing yards. So we're talking about around the average of just 5 more passing attempts a game. And if we can bank on the offense getting a little bit more efficient and the improvements of Garrett Wilson, you have a real argument based on these splits to say that Garrett Wilson, currently right now, he's going as like the wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 on underdog drafts, that Garrett Wilson has every right to be in the same conversation as Jamarr Chase, as Justin Jefferson. Now, I'm no fool. Like, taking the proven production of Justin Jefferson, I totally hear you, over Garrett Wilson. I think the discussion starts to happen when you're looking at the elite level metrics that Garrett Wilson has had. Why are we not taking a shot on Garrett Wilson as the wide receiver 1? Why is that not in his range of outcomes? And why is that not talked about enough? Now you could say, Caleb, the wide receiver 1 is in everybody's range of outcomes. But based on the stats that I just threw down your throat, I think there is an elite level chance that Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. And maybe you draft him as your wide receiver 7, he's only the wide receiver 3. But he is going to be in the competition, in the running, to be the wide receiver 1 this year, and I don't think enough people are ready for it. So let me know down below. Are you drafting Garrett Wilson that high? Are you as high on Garrett Wilson as me? Probably not, because you think I'm probably smoking. But I promise you I'm not. I've done the research. We've dove into it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Best free way to support the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one tomorrow. Peace.